She agreed to a fake mating to survive. Then the Alpha King refused to ever let her leave again. Ione Castellan counted the money in her hands for the third time that morning, and it still was not enough. $320. Her uncle owed the wrong people almost $20,000, and when he disappeared 2 weeks ago, the debt did not disappear with him. It landed on her, the way unwanted things always seem to land on her. She sat in the back room of a small tavern at the edge of Vale territory, a place that smelled of wood smoke and old wood, and waited for a man she had never met. People said he was fair. People also said he never let anyone leave a deal without giving something up first. The door opened without a sound. A tall man stepped in, broad-shouldered, calm in a way that made the room feel smaller. His eyes were the color of strong tea, and they studied her for a long moment before he spoke. "You are the human who owes the Grayson family a small fortune," he said. It was not a question. "I am the human who inherited a fortune she never spent," Ione answered. "There is a difference." Something almost like amusement crossed his face and then vanished. "I am Kade Vasilenko. I lead 4 packs in this territory. I hear you need protection, and I need a temporary mate." Ione blinked. "A what?" "There is a truce between my territory and the Hollow Pack. It is fragile. If I take a mate now, even for a short time, no one will challenge me during the truce season. It buys peace for both our lands. In return, you get my protection, and the debt collectors will never touch you as long as you carry my mark." "For how long?" 90 days. Then you are free to walk away, and so am I." Ione looked at the paper he placed in front of her. 3 lines. Simple. She read it twice, mostly because she could not believe something this important could be so short. "And if I say no?" "Then I wish you luck with the Grayson family," Kade said, and there was no cruelty in his voice, only fact. She thought of her uncle's empty house, of the men who had already come looking, of the boots she had heard on the porch at midnight. 90 days of safety was 90 days more than she had right now. She picked up the pen and signed her name. The bite that sealed the bond hurt more than she expected. She had thought it would be simple, a formality, something quick and painless like a handshake. Instead, there was heat at her throat, and the whole world went bright and small for a moment, the way a candle flares before it settles. Afterward, she sat very still and stared at the table, counting the lines in the wood grain just to have something to do with her mind. 4, 5, 6. The mark did not fade. It stayed warm under her skin, especially when Kade was near, like a small fire that never quite went out. She told herself this meant nothing. She told herself this many times over the following weeks, and each time it convinced her a little less. Life inside the Vale territory was not what she expected. She had imagined guards and rules and cold stares from people who did not want a human among them. Instead, she found a village built into the hills, full of families, children running between houses, an old woman who sold bread at dawn and always saved the warm loaf for whoever looked most tired. Kade did not treat her like a stranger passing through. He walked her to the market himself some mornings, though he never explained why he had time for it, when he led 4 packs and surely had more important things to do. He sat closer to her at meals than the arrangement required. He asked about her day, in a voice that sounded like he actually wanted to know the answer. 3 weeks in, she stood by the village well filling a bucket, when a man she did not know grabbed her wrist, his grip too tight, his voice too low. "Word is you're not really his mate," the man said. "Word is, you're just renting the title. So maybe I don't need his permission to talk to you." Ione pulled back, but his hand did not let go. Before she could think of what to say, Kade was there, and the man was on the ground, and Kade's voice had dropped into something that did not sound entirely human. "You do not touch what is mine," he said. The man scrambled up and left without another word. Ione stood there, wrist aching, heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with fear anymore. Mine. Not the mate we arranged. Not the woman under my protection. Mine. She did not know what to do with that word, so she folded it up and put it away, somewhere she was not ready to look at yet. Weeks passed, the way water moves over stone, slow and constant, wearing down edges she had not noticed were sharp. She learned the names of the pack members. She learned that Kade rose before dawn every day to train alone in the yard, going through the same forms again and again, sweat cutting down a back marked with old scars he never explained and she never asked about. One morning she found herself watching him longer than she meant to. "You're staring," he said without turning around. "You're distracting," she said, before she could stop herself. He made a sound that was almost a laugh, the first one she had heard from him, and it did something strange and unfair to her chest. They began spending evenings together, not because the arrangement required it, but because neither of them seemed to want to stop. He told her about his mother, who had led the pack before him, and taught him that strength without kindness was just cruelty with better manners. She told him about her own mother, gone many years now, who used to say that debts were just promises wearing a different coat. She caught herself laughing more. She caught herself hoping he would sit beside her at dinner before he even arrived. She caught herself more than once, forgetting to count the days remaining on the contract. On the 61st day, something happened that neither of them expected. They were laughing over something small, a goat that had wandered into the grain stores and caused 3 grown warriors to chase it in circles for an hour, and Kade reached over and brushed a strand of hair from her face. It was an easy gesture, unthinking, the kind of touch a person makes without deciding to make it. And Ione went somewhere else entirely. 5 years fell away in an instant, and she was standing in a different room, with a different hand reaching for her, a memory she kept locked at the very bottom of herself. She stepped back hard, her shoulder hitting the wall, breath catching in her throat. Kade did not reach for her again. He did not ask questions. He simply stood still, hands open at his sides, and waited, the way you wait out a storm without trying to stop it. "I am not him," he said quietly. "Whoever he was." She did not answer, but she did not need to. He had already understood. From that night on, he changed something small but important. He always said her name before he touched her hand. He always raised his palm slightly, a silent question, before he reached for her at all. It cost him nothing, and it rebuilt something in her, piece by piece, that she had thought was broken for good. For a few days afterward, she found herself snapping at him over nothing, small irritations that had little to do with him, and everything to do with the old wound he had accidentally uncovered. He took it without complaint, steady as ever, like a man who understood that patience was sometimes the only gift worth giving. By day 80, Ione had stopped thinking about the 90-day deadline as an escape. It had started to feel less like a countdown to freedom and more like a countdown to loss. She was not the only one who noticed the change. The old bread seller in the market began greeting her not as the human guest, but simply as dear, the way she greeted everyone she considered part of the village. Children waved when she passed. She had built a life here without meaning to, stitch by stitch, day by day. Then, on the 89th day, trouble found her anyway. 3 men appeared at the edge of the territory, and Ione recognized the leader before she saw his face. She knew his boots. She had heard them on porches and hallways she preferred not to remember. 90 days, the leader called out, grinning at Kade like he had done his research well. Word travels fast. Tomorrow the contract ends, and she goes back to being just a woman. Our woman, in fact, since her uncle's debt still needs paying. Kade stepped in front of her without being asked, calm as still water and twice as dangerous. "She is under veil protection," he said. "For one more day." "She was never under my protection because of a piece of paper," Kade said. "That was never the reason." Ione's breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. What followed was brief. Kade did not fight like a man following the rules of a fair contest. He fought like a man who had already decided how the moment would end, and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. The men left with nothing, and they did not come back. The next morning was day 90, exactly on schedule, the way endings arrive whether a person is ready for them or not. Ione stood again in the small back office of the tavern, where this had all begun. The same table, the same lines in the wood grain. 4, 5, 6. Kade placed a new paper in front of her. It was not a renewal. It did not have a line reading, "Then you walk away." It was a permanent bond. No expiration, no conditions attached. "You do not have to sign this," he said. "You never had to sign anything twice with me." "And if I don't?" she asked, though her voice was softer this time, less like a question, and more like an invitation to be talked out of leaving. Then you still walk away with everything I promised. The protection, the debt cleared. That part was never something you had to earn twice. He paused, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked almost uncertain. I just did not want you to leave here believing this was ever 90 days for me. She looked down at the paper. Then she looked up at him, at the scars on his back she had never asked about, at the man who led 4 packs and yet had waited for her permission before ever taking her hand. She picked up the pen. This time she did not need to count the knots in the table to steady herself. She already knew exactly where she stood. She signed her name, and for the first time since she had arrived in the Vale territory, it did not feel like an ending. It felt like the first page of something she actually wanted to keep. Word never got out that the mating had once been arranged for convenience, because by the time anyone thought to ask, it had stopped being a temporary thing a long time before the ink on the second paper ever dried. The debt collectors never returned, the rumors faded, and in the quiet hills of the Vale territory, a woman who once counted days until she could leave, found herself counting something else entirely. Mornings she woke up glad to still be there, and a man who never once made her feel like a bargain instead of a choice.